This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so yesterday we discussed about some of these arithmetic operators. So how we deal with the assignment operator and also the arithmetic operators. We have different classifications. So when we say unary operator, right? When we use plus plus minus minus, and when we call operator as a binary expression and ternary operator. Okay, so all these things we discussed, and we also discussed about arithmetic assignment operators and also the relational operators to do the comparisons which returns either true or false. If you want to combine multiple conditions using AND or OR, we use logical operators. So now by using these relational operators and the logical operators, we can write the conditional statements. The purpose of the conditional statement is to control which set of statements should be executed. Okay, that can be controlled using the conditional statement. Okay, so let's say when you have 10 statements and you want to conditionally control whether those 10 statements should be executed or not. So we can control by using these conditional statements. So one of the conditional statement what we use is the if condition. Okay, if so just again there are different flavors of the if. Okay, people say simple if. So how it works? Let me show you. Okay, to play with this, click on this. Once you log into Salesforce, click on this setup icon. Click on Developer Console. In the Developer Console, click on Debug. Open Execute Anonymous window. So here we can execute some Apex statements without following any program structure. Right? Just some statements we can write and execute the statements and see the result. Okay. So here, just I'm saying integer number 1 is equal to say 100. Number 2 is equal to 500. This is what I'm taking. Okay. Now I want to take one conditional statement if, right? We give condition. Okay. So the condition I'm just giving as number 1 is greater than 100. Right? If number 1 is greater than 100, then only it should enter inside. Right? System.debug. Just I'm saying inside if condition. This is the message I'm printing. Now what is happening? This number 1 is 100, right? 100 greater than 100? No. Right? It's not greater than. It is same as 100. So this condition fails and you don't see this statement executed. If I execute, right? So just make sure to check this open log. If we execute, you don't see this one in the log because it won't enter inside and execute this one. It fails itself. Here itself it fails. Okay. So now execute and see. Execute, debug only, nothing is there, right? So now let's say if I give greater than equal to, this time the condition will be satisfied, right? Yes. It enters inside and it executes this one. We'll see this in the log. Okay. Click on execute. Click on debug only. It is there inside the log. Okay. So now go back. Okay. So now, this is one example. So one more flavor. Sometimes if the if condition is not satisfied, we want to execute some other set of statements. If this condition fails, we have a plan to execute some other set of statements. Okay, so that time we use if else. Okay, so for that, so same thing. Here we give else condition, and for the time being, inside else, something like this I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm just giving like this number 100 greater than 100. No, it fails here. Since it is failing here, it enters into else part. Right? If the conditions are not satisfied, it will go to else part and it execute this one. Okay, so let's see execute. We have to see this message inside else block. Execute. Click on debug only inside else block. Right? So it's like that. Just copy. Okay. So like this. So now one more thing, what I want to show you, we also have else if. Okay, what is this else if? Let's understand. Okay, so let's say sometimes if this condition is not satisfied, we want to check for one more condition. That time we use else if. Okay, else again one more if condition. Okay, so I'm checking is number 2 is greater than 100. I'm checking. Right? So I'm just giving inside else if condition, right? And also like this, we can add any number of else if conditions, right? So again, I am saying number 2 is greater than 200. So here I'll say first else if, second else if condition. Okay, so I'm just giving like this. Okay, so now if we execute, so what we see in the log, so which statement will be executed. Okay, so if you see here number 2 500 greater than 100, yes, it will print this one. 500 greater than 200, right? It will also print or not. That's the thing. So initially when we start, that is the confusion. Okay, people think that both will be printed. That is wrong. Okay, when we use if, else if, else if, else if, else, out of all these blocks, right? Out of all these conditions, any one of the condition will be executed. So what will happen? It will check if condition. If the if condition is satisfied, it will ignore checking the remaining blocks. Okay, let's say if this is satisfied, it will ignore checking the remaining other conditions. So that means here it will print only inside first else if. Since it is satisfied, it won't check for this one. Okay, don't think that it will also enter into this one. Then that's the point. Out of all these blocks, any one of the block will be executed. That is how else if will work. Okay, so now if you execute, if you click on debug only, now if you see inside first else if condition, right? So but it is not entering into the second one, right? So that's about this else if. Okay, let's say my requirement is I want to execute, even though this is satisfied or not satisfied, still it should check this, and if this is satisfied, I also want to execute this statement. So if you want like that, so we use IfSeries. So that means we keep all if conditions one after other. Okay. If you give like this, so what will happen? Irrespective of whether this condition is satisfied or not satisfied, still system will check for this one. If this is satisfied or not satisfied, still system will check for this one. So that way, this two will be executed now. Okay. So when you have a scenario to execute all conditions, irrespective of the one of the conditions satisfied or not, you can consider keeping all the if conditions one after other, right? So both are printed. So that's technically people say if series. Okay, that is also like a simple if, right? Multiple if conditions, since we are placing one after other, people say if series. Okay, in the same way, we can keep the conditions inside one more condition, right? So let's say here I'm keeping this condition inside this. So if you give like this, people say nested if. Okay, inside if condition, again one more if condition. Or it can be if condition or if else if condition or if else condition, it can be anything. It's up to you. Okay, inside a condition, inside one more condition, like that we can give. So this is one of the example for the nested if, right? So in order to execute the inner if condition statement, first of all, the outer if condition statement should be satisfied. Now, both are satisfied, and we are seeing. Okay, so this you can say an example of the nested if. We also have one more conditional type of syntax using switch and when. Okay. For now, I am not explaining to avoid the confusion. Okay. So in general, with this if condition, you can achieve any kind of requirement. No need to really use switch. Slowly we will understand if needed. Okay. So that's about this conditional statement, what we use on day to day when you work for requirement. Okay. The next thing, the looping statements. Okay. Before we start about this looping statement, any questions? So for anyone? Okay. So we have different types of loops. Okay. So one of the type is while loop, right? We have while loop, we have do while loop, we have for loop. There are two flavors: index based for loop and for each loop. Yeah, I'll explain about all those. Okay. So mostly we use for loop. Most of the times we use for loop. Maybe in some situations, if needed, we also use the while. Okay. So let's see first how we use the while. Later we deal with the other loops. Okay. So here integer, I'm defining a variable. In general, when we deal with the loops, you see the loop variables we use as I, J, K, like that, right? As a programming standard in most of the languages, if developer want to use any loop, developer start thinking from I, right? So I, let's say if there is a inner loop, J, K, L, M, like that we use. Yeah, that's the standard. Technically, do you want to use only I? No, it can be anything. If you want to give the variable name as something else, also fine. Okay. But as a standard, mostly you see people using I. I'm also using the same thing. So the loop variable, right? This is the initialization part, right? Initialization. We have one variable I and the default value is 0. Next, while inside this we give the condition. Here, whatever we are giving is the condition. So when which condition satisfied, it should enter inside. That condition we need to give here, right? I greater than 10, right? But it will never enter, right? So I less than 10, right? Until I value is less than 10, it enters inside. Okay. So what you want to do inside? Let's say I want to print the I value, right? System.debug. I'm printing the I value. If you leave it like this, it is very, very dangerous, right? So because I value is 0, we are not changing that value. Always 0 less than 10, it will try to execute infinite times, right? So system cannot wait until that time. You will see after one minute, you will see CPU time limit exceeded, some kind of error. Okay, so that's why we should be careful. Okay, so while using the while loop, so make sure that at some point of time the condition of the while condition should be spoiled. Okay, if it is not spoiled after some certain loops, I mean certain iterations, it's very dangerous, right? You see how much time it is executing, and almost after 60 seconds, you see one error, CPU time limit exceeded. Okay, so we have the governor limits in Salesforce. So it's not that unlimited. So for each and every feature, we have some upper limits. Okay, so one of the limit, if you see system.limit exception, affects the CPU time limit exceeded. Right, this is the error we are seeing. Okay, now if you see this log, right? So in the background we have this log. Just open that one. Just I'll show you some governor limits, right? So we have governor limits, right? The upper limits, whatever Salesforce enforced for each and every feature, we technically call that as a governor limit. Okay. If you see the size of this log is 18 MB, right? Huge file generated. Right? So even it is taking a lot of time to open this because the size of the file is very huge, right? So now if you scroll down almost to down, at the end you see some of the limits. If you see, right? So Apex maximum CPU time limit, right? 15,018 out of. So here this is in milliseconds. Okay. So the limit is 10 seconds, right? 10,000 means 10 seconds. 1,000 milliseconds means 1 second. Okay. So the maximum limit in a transaction is 10 seconds. But our operation took 15 seconds, right? So this limit is exceeded. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem we got. Okay. So now go back and make sure to use, we have to use increment or decrement operator. Otherwise you see this kind of problem. So I'm incrementing the value by 1, right? So this is for increment or decrement. So now due to this, what will happen? Initially I is equal to 0, 0 less than 10, it enters inside and print 0. And it will be increasing the value by 1. Now 1 less than 10, again it print, and 2 less than 10. Once I becomes 10, 10 less than 10, it fails. Right? 0 to 9, total 10 values we see. Okay, all these three are important. Okay, so here you keep your statements, maybe 10 lines or 20 lines or whatever as per the requirement. Okay, so now execute and see. Now we see 0 to 9. Okay, execute. Click on debug only 0 to 9, right? So you are seeing this is one of the example for the while. Okay, so what is this do while? Okay, let's understand. Okay, so do while, instead of checking the condition first we use do, and here we give the condition. We keep the condition here at the end. Okay, so the advantage of the do while when compared to while, irrespective of whether the condition satisfied or not, all the statements are guaranteed to execute for one time. Okay, so now if I don't do anything, if I execute, now also you see the result as 0 to 9, right? Now also, if I click on execute, for while loop we got 0 to 9. For this also you get 0 to 9 only, right? So what is the difference? So let's say I'm making the I value as 100, right? Is the condition satisfied? 100 less than 10? No, right? Even though the condition not satisfied, one time all the statements will be executed. Later it check for the condition failed. Second time onwards it won't execute. Okay. So the advantage is all the statements in the block is guaranteed to execute for one time. Okay. While loop, it won't execute anything, right? So if you execute, click on debug only, 100 you are seeing, right? So that means it entered inside and it is printing 100, and it will make this value as 101, 101 less than 10. No, it is failed. That's what is happening. Okay. So that's the difference when compared to while. All statements into while guaranteed to execute for one time. That's the example. Okay, the next one is for loop, right? We have two types. One is index based for loop. So let's see how this will work. Okay, so for this, everything we write inside this for inside this line. Okay, so the initialization, the condition, increment and decrement, everything in the same line, right? So the syntax will be like this. Initialization. So here condition, increment or decrement. If you execute like this, it will throw error, right? This is just I'm typing for our understanding purpose, right? But we should give the real initialization values and all those things. Okay, so here I'm defining a variable integer I equal to 0. I equal to 0, right? So I less than, okay, so I less than, I'm giving 10 or 20 or whatever you want. Okay, that is a condition. I plus plus means it will increment the I value by 1. Okay, so inside this I'm printing the I value, system.debug, I'm printing the I value. Okay, now how it works? So maybe, so initially first it execute this part. Okay, only one time it execute. Okay, so initially I value is 0. Later it check this condition, 0 less than 10. Yes, it enter inside this and it execute all these statements, right? So after executing all these statements, it will increment this value by 1. Right now here I value will be 1. Right? After that again it will check for this condition 1 less than 10. Yes. Again it execute all these statements. again it will increment this value, right? And again condition 2 less than 10. So this will be executed repeatedly, right? Until the condition fails. But this part execute only one time. Okay. So just understand. So this is how this for loop will work, index based for loop. Okay. So now, so let's see, execute and see. Okay. We'll see from 0 to 9. So why I am starting from 0, right? The reason why we start from 0, right? So going forward, we deal with the collections, one of the concept. Okay, when we deal with a collection type called a list, the index of the element start from 0, right? Mostly to access that in general in the programming, we start from 0. Okay. Otherwise, in general on day to day, we don't consider 0, right? We say 1 to 10. Okay, so that's why I'm using, but initially maybe for your testing, if you want to print from 1 to 10, you can say I equal to 1 and I less than equal to 10. You can do that. Okay. So anyway, now it generated the log and you are seeing 0 to 9, right? So this is index based for loop. Okay. Go back and I'm placing this here for a reference for each loop, right? For each loop, how it works. So for this, still we did not discuss about a concept called collections. That is one of our upcoming concept. Okay. Here, don't worry about the syntax, what I'm going to keep. Okay. In future, we will understand in detail. Okay. To explain about this for each loop, I'm taking some freedom here to write some list and have the values. Okay. But actual syntax and in detail, we'll understand as part of the one of the future topic. Okay. So for now, I'm defining a list of type integer. Okay. In general, if you define integer, right? Integer number one, how many values you can assign? Only one value at a time. I want to hold 100 values or 50 values, right? I want multiple values to hold of the number type. So that time we use this list of integer. Okay. So I'm just saying number list is equal to. So for this, we need to, this is like a, for non-primitive, how we create the reference. Here also, we need to do something like that. Okay. For now, don't bother about this line. Okay. In future, as part of the collections topic, you will understand how exactly it works. Okay. For now, to show you quickly, I'm creating one list having some numbers, integer numbers. Okay. So this syntax we'll discuss in future. Now let's focus on this for each loop, how it works. For right side, the collection, right? Collection means the variable which is having multiple values. Right side, we use collection. Left side, what is the data type of the collection? It is integer, right? Integer. And some variable name as a developer, whatever you feel. So this is the collection. Left side, what is the collection data type? That one. And this is the name of the variable, whatever you feel as a developer, you can give. Now, what will happen? If you see here, this list is having 4 values, right? For each means it iterate over each and every element. First time in the iteration, this NUM will be having 100. In the second time of the iteration, NUM will be having 300. Third time, NUM will be 200. Right? Fourth time, 100, like that. So after fourth time, there are no elements, right? It will stop. Okay. The thing is, the loop will iterate for each element in the collection. Okay. So now all I am doing here is I'm printing that number, right? System.debug. I'm printing this number. Okay. So just so I have saved this one. Okay. Now let's go back. I think the same thing we execute here and see. Okay, execute. Click on debug only. Now, if you see, we are seeing each and every value, right? 100, 300, 200, 100. Same values are there in this list. Okay, this is about the for each loop. So mostly once we start working for requirements, we use this one out of all these loops. Okay, and sometimes this one. Okay? These things very rare. Okay, so when we use while, if you don't know how many times we need to iterate, in those kind of situations, we deal with the while. Okay? If you know how many times we can iterate, mostly we use for. Okay, so that's about the loops. Okay, so any questions on understanding this? No questions. Okay, the next thing is input and output statements, right? So for now, to deal with these things, we need the UI. UI means web page, right? When we interact from the web page to the Apex code, that time mostly we deal with the input and output terminology. Okay. So for now, still we are not ready to work on that, right? So later part, I will be explaining about the UI, the web page development. For now, as a developer, to understand, we use some keywords. In general, in the programming terminology, get means output. Okay. Set means input, right? So let's say we have a web page and you are entering some value and you want to set that value into one of the variable which is in the Apex class. So that time we define that variable as set. Yeah, I'll explain going forward how we can mention the variable as set. Okay. In the same way, if you want to access the variable which is in the Apex class, Apex code onto the UI, that time we need to mark that variable as get. Get means output. We can show that value on the web page. Set means we can enter some input and that whatever we entered on the UI will be assigned to the variable like that. Okay, so going forward, we understand more. Okay, for now, if you see the get keyword, so for reading purpose, right? Get means reading. Set means writing, right? So reading means why we read to output to show on the UI, right? Input, right? Write means we give some input so that it will add into that variable. Okay, so just understand like this for now. Okay, so we see this more going forward. Okay, so with this, we are done with our initial set of basics. Okay, the initial basics we are done. Okay, so what is program? What are the different statements in the program? All those things we discussed. Now I'll show some programs now. Now I think based on what we discussed, we'll be having the capability to understand why the statements are written in the program. Okay, so let's open one of my website. Okay, so now here I'm just clicking on these programs. I'm opening this one. Right? For now, don't bother about this part. Okay, what is that class and what is this? We'll be discussing about that. That is our next topic. Okay, only focus on the statements inside a program. These are the statements. Okay, so what is the purpose of this statement? They are allocating the memory, right, with the string type. They are defining a data type variable to hold the string value here, right? And also they are defining some variables of integer type. And also they are assigning some default values, right? Now if you see this one, index based for loop. right? Just now we discussed, right? So this is a index based for loop, and here they are adding two numbers and assigning, right? Assignment operator, arithmetic operator, right? And also we see this one, arithmetic assignment, right? The meaning of this expression is Fibonacci series is equal to Fibonacci series plus this part, right? So now, so just understand. So based on what we discussed, right, we are able to identify why these statements are written. Okay. In the same way, let me show you one more program. In this program, they are defining a Boolean variable, right? Memory. They are allocating memory to hold the Boolean value. And if you see here, they are using if condition, conditional statement. And also here they are checking double equal to means comparison, right? Comparison. And also they are combining two conditions with OR, logical operator, right? So we know we are able to recognize so why they are using that, right? And also maybe here they are doing some calculations and they are using system.debug to print in the log as a developer. So due to this, there is no use for the application functionality. This system.debug is only for the developer purpose to see what is happening. Okay. So maybe before you deploy to production, if you don't want, you can comment and deploy. Or maybe in some production, in production, if there are some issues, that time if you are troubleshooting, that time this system.debugs will be useful for us as a developer. Okay. So that's the thing. So already we know about that one, right? So that's about this. Okay. Now the next level, how we keep all these statements in an organized way in a program structure. Okay? So that we have to understand, right? So it's like now we understood the if you take TV, right? In TV there are different elements. Now we understood what are those different types of elements, right? Let's say motherboard and maybe so picture tube and many other elements, right? So we also discussed about different statements and why we use those things. Now we need to assemble everything and make as one unit, right? Like that. So here to do that, so we need to know about one of the concept called OOPS concepts. Okay, so the Apex programming language is based on the OOPS concepts, object-oriented programming concepts. Okay, so maybe some of you, if you know Java, .NET, C++, all these languages are based on the OOPS concepts. Okay, object-oriented programming concepts. Okay. So full form is object-oriented programming concepts. These things we are going to understand. So as part of this, okay, so don't try to exactly compare with Java or some people they are saying is it similar to C? No, C is completely different and this is completely different. So if at all, if you want to compare with other languages which are based on OOPS concepts. For example, .NET, C++, Java, right? So people mostly compare with the Java. But it's not that exactly in Java what we do is here the same thing. No, slightly many things are simplified. When compared to Java, here it is easy. Okay, few things. Salesforce on the platform they simplified many things. Okay, we'll see going forward. So that's why don't try to compare with other languages. Already, if you know about that, for now don't compare each thing. Okay, focus on what we are discussing, so that will be good. Okay, so the first OOPS concept, sorry, encapsulation. So encapsulation, we have abstraction, we have polymorphism, we have inheritance. So all these are the OOPS concepts. We have different OOPS concepts. Okay. So before we understand about these OOPS concepts, little bit we should know some basics. Okay, so let's say, so we have a program, right? So why we write the program? Most of the times why we write the program. Okay, so we supply some data as input, and the system should apply some logic on the data, and we have to see that result. Right? That's the most of the times that's the purpose we use the program. So to hold our data, the input data or output data, to hold, system needs memory, right? That means we define the variables. Okay, so we define variables to hold the memory, and also to write the maybe to execute some logic, right? We write some set of statements, right? If you want to reuse the set of statements again and again, so in OOPS programming languages, so we keep all those statements inside the methods. Okay, so we have methods. So method is like reusable set of statements. Okay, so we keep, let's say there are 10 statements. We need to execute the 10 statements again and again based on some requirements. That time we keep all those statements together as one method. Right? One method is like one action. Let's say I'm giving two numbers. With those two numbers, what you want to do? Do you want to do addition or subtraction or multiplication? Right? All those are different actions, right? For each action, we write one method. Right? It might be having only one statement or 10 statements or 100 statements. It's based on the requirement. Okay. So these are like actions, right? This is data, whatever we deal, right? When you mostly deal with the program, you see data and actions, right? Variables and methods. These are the major elements in a program which we see. Okay? Major elements. Okay? So we say each and everything, maybe technically element, right? So now, if you come back to understand about this encapsulation, so the definition is it binds the elements in a program together, right? Bind means it will keep everything together. Okay, so let's say here the elements, maybe the variable and method, everything it is wrapping inside one unit, right? We use this curly brackets and wrap it inside one unit. Okay, so that's the thing. It is like we have TV, right? So multiple elements inside the TV, we combine everything. I mean, the manufacturer, whoever manufactures, they combine everything and make it as one unit by keeping all the panel and everything. Right? Encapsulation is also like that. We have multiple different variables and methods and statements. If you want to wrap it as one unit and utilize that one, so we use encapsulation. Okay. So as part of the encapsulation, so we have class and interface. Okay. So we have the class and we have the interface. So that means when we wrap all these elements into one of the unit, we have to give that name as class. I mean, we need to start with the class. Okay. If you write any Apex program, the Apex program should start with either class or interface. Inside that only we keep our logic, right? So it's like that. So now, first thing what we need to understand, what is this class? So we understood it wrap all the elements in a program together as one unit. So if you keep like this, what is the advantage? Okay, so let's see. So class, to understand easily, so it is a plan. Class is like a plan, right? In general, on day to day, if you want to do something, we plan first, right? After that, we do that whatever we want. For example, let's say we need to construct one building. There is a, let's say, so for your house, so to construct the building, you need the plan first, right? Without plan, no one will start and do the construction. First, we take the plan from the engineer, right? By following the plan, so people construct the building, right? So class is also like that. So when we write the class, nothing will happen, right? So when we write the class, we plan, right? So it's like, so when someone supply two numbers, so what we need to do? You want to add, use plus operator. Do you want to subtract, use minus operator? So like that we plan and write the class, right? So once you create the class, it's not that everything will be allocated, nothing. The class is like the plan on the paper, okay? So when the real object will come, let's say the building plan on the paper, so how it becomes reality? By following that plan, if someone construct the building by using bricks, cement and everything, finally there is a physical existence of a building, right? In the same way, when we create the class, it's like a plan and nothing will happen. If you want to use that plan, right, you need to create the object. You need to create the object and use the plan. Right? When you create the object, that point of time only, whatever the variables we define, whatever we do, all those things, system allocate the memory and perform those actions. Okay, so it's like that. Maybe one more example if you want. Let's say the building plan, maybe the car, right? So the car plan on the paper is like a class, right? So there is still the car is not in reality, right? Once the car is manufactured, the physical existence of the car is like a object, right? So how that is created? By following the plan. In the same way, we have the class. For that class, if you want to utilize the logic, whatever we write, we need to create the object and then we can use system will allocate the memory for all the variables and all these methods will execute. Okay, so it's like that. Okay, so once you have the object, right? Let's say once we have the car, nothing will happen automatically. By using that car, you need to do the actions. You need to open the door, you need to start the car, you need to accelerate. We have to instruct what you want. In the same way, for the class, after creating the object, we instruct which action you want to execute, right? What you want to do, all those things. So it's like that. So these OOPS concepts are based on the real world, what we do on day to day. By inspiring from that, these concepts are introduced. Okay. So by using one plan, you can create multiple objects. Let's say car plan is ready. By following that, company manufacture hundreds of cars, right? In the same way, once we have the class, any number of times you can create the object and call the class logic. It's like that. Okay. So just to have that understanding. So once we start writing, you will get more clarity. Okay. The next thing before we start writing a class, I think almost we are ready to write a class. Okay. The one thing what I want to explain before writing the class is about the abstraction. So abstraction, it deals with the visibility of the elements in a program, right? It deals with the visibility of the elements in a program. So how it is, let's say if you take the car, right? Only few things will be visible outside. Most of the things will be not visible. For example, engine. Do we need to see the car engine? No, right? Internally, if it is functioning, that is fine for us. So really, we don't want how the engine looks and what is happening, right? So for a car, so what what we need to see. Only those things they expose, right? We see the dashboard, we see how much speed the car is going. You see the brake and accelerator, all those things are available outside. Most of the many other engine and many other parts will be there inside, and those will function properly. Okay, so abstraction deals which should be visible, which should be hidden, right? Those kind of things will be controlled using the abstraction, right? It deals with which element should be visible to everyone, which elements should be visible to only the car owner, which elements should be not visible to anyone. All those things will be controlled using this abstraction. Okay, so as part of this, we have access modifiers. Okay, so we use private, protected, public, and the global. So like this. Okay, so private means when you have a class, right? Class is like one program. When you write a program, private means the private variables or the methods, whatever we define, will be accessible only within the same program, right? Visibility within the same program, right? Visibility within the same program we call as private. Protected means visibility within the same program and also related programs, right? So how we relate? So we have one of the concept called inheritance. By using inheritance, we make parent and child relationships between the classes. So when you have multiple programs, we can make one program as parent and other program as child. So that time, so maybe if you want to maintain the visibility for related programs also, we use protected. Okay. The other one is public. Public means within our Salesforce organization, from any program to any program, the variable or method will be accessible. Okay. Visibility within the same org, from any program to any program. Okay, so now global means not only within the Salesforce org, even outside the Salesforce. Let's say there is a requirement to do the integration. So Java platform, Java team, they want to read our logic, right? The logic, whatever we write in Salesforce, the program logic, the external platform application team, they want to read. Okay, so if you want to expose that level, that time we use global, right? So visibility outside the Salesforce org also. Okay, as part of the mainly as part of the integration. That time we use this global. Okay, so these are the access modifiers, deals which we see. So which should be visible, which should be hidden. So all those things will be controlled here. Okay. Now with this information, I think we are ready to create a class. Okay, let's create the class and understand. Okay. So to create the class, there are different places where we can create the class. Once you log into Salesforce, one of the place, left side, search for Apex class. Click on Apex class. From here, you can create the Apex class. The other place, go to Developer Console, File, New, and from here also you can create. Otherwise, we have some tools. Okay, this one we call as Visual Studio Code, which is a open source tool from Microsoft. You can download and install this tool. By default, this tool won't support our Salesforce development. we need to install one of the extension so that it starts supporting our Salesforce development. From this tool, we can connect it to our Salesforce organization, and we can work here. Right? We create in our local system. We create the class in our local system, and we deploy to this Salesforce. That is one of the way. So one of the easiest way when we start newly, either creating from here or creating from the developer console. Mostly starters who starts newly, people use developer console. Okay, so maybe work with the developer console in the initial phase. Slowly, once we gain some experience, we can also start using this Visual Studio Code, because this tool provides many advanced extensions, the look and feel of the code, right? So as a developer, you just get the feel to work more by applying some themes and all those things, right? So this mostly we work with this tool going forward, but for initial few programs, I'll be explaining here. Okay, and also don't think that, so if you create here in developer console, that program is available only here. If you create here, only it is available here. It is not like that. These are the places from where you create. Ultimately, all these things will be stored in one of the database table called FX class. All the programs what we create will store in one of the database table called FX class. Okay. If you create here, that can be accessible from here also. If you create here, that can be accessible from here also. Okay, it's like that. Okay. So now let's create a program from here. Right? Click on new. Okay. So here I'm saying program should start with either class or interface. Right? So we are using class now. Class. So program starting and ending. Okay. But we create multiple programs, right? Let's say one of the company manufacturing the car. They will be having different models, right? It's not that one plan they have and manufacture all different models. For each model, they will be having one plan. As per that, they'll create the car and deliver in the market, right? The same way, on day to day when we deal, we need to deal with the different plans. Each one should have a unique name, like a car model, right? So that's why we need to give the name. Okay, for us to start easily, immediately to understand, I'm taking an example of rectangle class. Okay, so I want to calculate area and perimeter of a rectangle. Okay, so for that we need length and breadth. So simple program I am writing. So I'm just saying rectangle, right? Rectangle is this is a plan for rectangle. Okay, when you have rectangle shape, so how you are going to calculate few things based on the length and breadth. That's what we are planning. Okay. So class name, and this is the starting and ending of the program and save. Okay, when you click on save, so what will happen? System will compile for the syntax, right? System will check for the syntax. If the syntax is wrong, system won't allow to save. That is what is happening here, right? So until we fix the syntax, our code won't save. You lose these changes. Let's say if you want to stop here and work later, it won't save first of all. You need to save this somewhere and later again paste it and avoid this error. Okay. So while saving the program, whatever the errors we get, we call those errors as compilation errors. Okay. And if you see here, it is saying top level type must have either public or global visibility. Okay. So I told that we have this abstraction access modifiers. If you don't mention any access modifier, the default access modifier is private. Right? I'm not mentioning whether this class is public or global or protected or private, right? If you don't mention anything, system will understand by default it is private. So it is thinking that this class is private. the top level class means when you click on new and creating a class, the top level class should be either public or global. It's not allowed to define that as either private or protected. That's the rule. So, but when we can define the class as private, we can also create the inner class. That means inside the class again we can create one more class. So that time we can do. Okay. So now for saving, I'm just giving public. Now it is saved, right? And also in the class, if you want to keep the comments, we use the // single line commenting, right? So we know this point, right? Top level type must have public or global visibility. So that point I'm keeping. So for now I'm saving. You see this program is saved successfully, right? So since we don't have time, on Monday we proceed further and add some more logic, okay, and understand other things, okay. So before ending today, so any questions, anyone? Okay, so if some of you, if you are joining directly for development, we are done with the demos with today. Okay, from Monday the meeting link will be changed. So all of you just check your email for the updated link and join. Okay, so if you are new, you have to pay the fee and so that you will get the meeting. Okay, we'll continue on Monday. Thank you.